Where do you believe your morals originally come from? Moral zeitgeist is a term used by atheists to explain the evolution of morality. According to academia.edu, Richard Dawkins is one of those atheists who believe humans and society are improving on what they think is right or wrong, and he calls this idea shifting moral zeitgeist. Richard Dawkins is an English ethologist, evolutionary biologist, and author. He wrote the novel entitled The God Delusion, and after writing this novel, he became known for his idea that he calls changing moral zeitgeist. According to an interview with CNN, when asked the question along the lines of, after your readers noticed your doubt over religion's roles in society, they asked if an absence of religion would leave us without a moral compass. Dawkins answers that question by saying the moral compass of a person depends on what century they live in, regardless of their religion. He goes on to say how times have changed and that we are less racist and less sexist than we were 100 or even 200 years ago. According to an article in The Economist magazine, Dawkins wants to encourage a change in the zeitgeist so when people hear Catholic child or Muslim child, they will cringe and wonder how a child already formed opinions on that religion. He believes being brought up with religious views is a form of child abuse. According to a book review by Benjamin Thompson, Dawkins argues that morals do not originate from the Bible, but rather the moral evolution comes from which parts of the Bible Christians decide to accept and which parts they decide to dismiss. According to an article by Nicholas Lash, Dawkins strongly believes that leaving religion behind will help the human race become more enlightened and more decent, and the zeitgeist will continue to move on. Richard Dawkins goes back at least 6 decades with examples of this idea in his book, The God Delusion. According to The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, there are many illustrations of how the moral zeitgeist moves on. The first one he gives is speeches from 2 prominent historical figures about race. Thomas Huxley wrote in 1871, "No rational man believes that the average Negro is the equal, still less the superior, of the white man." Abraham Lincoln states in 1858, "I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social or political equality of the white and black races." Dawkins quotes these 2 men only to show how the zeitgeist moves on, because if they were born in our time, they would be disgusted with their own statements. The next example he gives is when the sailors first landed in Mauritius and saw the gentle dodo birds and decided to kill them by clubbing them to death. They didn't do this because they wanted to eat them. They did it because it was simply just something to do. These days, that would be considered a tragedy. This graphic illustration is only to show how the zeitgeist rapidly moves on. The third example he gives is people hunting African animals for game, not for food or because of self-defense, but for sport. Now that the zeitgeist has changed, these rich sportsmen can shoot these animals from the comfort of their cars, even if they have to pay a large amount of money to take the stuffed heads home with them. And nowadays, these sportsmen are widely shunned for this act. The last example he gives is how even Hitler may seem more evil in the viewpoint of our time because we judge his evilness based on the standards of our time. Dawkins believes Hitler may not have been very far outside of the zeitgeist of his time. A question that Dawkins can't seem to answer is how the moral zeitgeist gets spread around to so many people, but he has ideas. Some of his ideas include through conversations at bars or dinner parties. It can spread through newspapers, radio talk shows, and nowadays through the internet. There are 2 ways Dawkins' idea can benefit society. The first being that this idea can change the outlook people have on life and morals. The second way this idea could benefit society is because they could have influence on the change of zeitgeist since it is spread from mind to mind through conversations. To conclude, Richard Dawkins' idea of changing moral zeitgeist is his way of saying our morals have nothing to do with religion, but simply has to do with what century we live in. Several people would disagree with him and say our morals and values have everything to do with religion and what we consider to be right and wrong. What's your take on Dawkins' idea? Thank you.